Hello and namaste to everyone. So we are back with our Materia Medica by Dr. N.M. Choudhuri series, and today we are going to learn about the remedy Croton Tig. But I would first like to apologize for not being able to make a video for so long. I've been quite busy and couldn't find enough time, but here I am. Today we are going to learn about Croton Tig from Dr. N.M. Choudhuri's Materia Medica. So Croton Tig actually is a fruit. Actually it is a fruit which has three seeded capsule, and this seed that this fruit has, it is a plant with fruit and there is a seed. So that seed actually has a lot of poisoning effects also. So it is also used in poisoning fish in Java, and it grows largely in India, and it is also exported from Bombay and Cochin every year. So now the oil that is produced from these seeds is pale yellow, and it has a fetid odor, and it has this mild acrid burning taste. Now these seeds and this oil has a lot of effect in its crude form on the human body, and as always Dr. N.M. Choudhuri first explains that, and so let's learn what he explains. So the effects of crude form of Croton Tig are seen on skin. So when the oil is applied on the skin, it produces rubefaction or a pustular eruption. So there is an eruption with pus inside of it. That is the effect that this produces on the skin. Then also it has a great action on GIT. So the action is irritative, meaning it irritates the mucosa of the stomach, of the intestines, and causes a lot of watery secretion. Now it is also a drastic purgative. Purgative means what? That it is it is giving rise to this emptying of the bowel. So there is a lot of gushing out of the stools, and it is kind of a laxative meaning. So many times it is used in Indian households or in in India for as a purpose of a laxative to clear the bowels. So it is very well known because the rapidity of its action is really very fast, and the smallness of the dose required is also an advantage, because you require a very small amount of it, and it really shows action within less amount of time. So it gives this laxative effect. And on uterus also it has an action which is again irritative, where it is also an abortifacient. So if there is a pregnant lady, and if she by any chance eats or has this oil, or any chance by eats its seeds or something, then she is going to abort. So the child is going to get aborted. So that's how it has action on skin, GIT, and uterus. And as always we know that during poisoning or during or the crude effects of any drug that are produced on different systems in the body are very important, because the particular systems on which the crude form of the drug is acting will be the sphere of action of the homeopathic remedy as well. So while we're going to talk about this remedy now, we'll see that this remedy acts on GIT very importantly, and also acts on skin and also on uterus. But Dr. N.M. Choudhuri talks about GIT and skin, and that is we're going to discuss about today. Now further, after giving this quick introduction about the crude form of Croton Tig, he goes on to tell us that in the hand of a homeopath, thanks to the genius of Samuel Hahnemann, this strong purgative has been turned into one of his principal curatives in persistent diarrhea and purging of the worst variety. So what he is saying here is that we see that in crude form this drug is actually producing diarrhea, it is producing laxative effect, it is acting against constipation, it is clearing up the bowels. And in the hands of Hahnemann, when we patentize the medicine, when we because generally what is known, generally there's a controversy that homeopathy doesn't act, because what is there in homeopathy, because it is diluted to a lot of extent and potentized and diluted. So what crude form actually does exist in it? So there's not going to be any action. This is what normally generally people think, but it's not so, because even after potentizing this law of similia comes into play, right? And that is why if this remedy, this substance in its crude form is able to produce diarrhea in its crude form, so when we think of it in potentized form, it is going to cure diarrhea, right? And that is what we see. It is a curative in persistent diarrhea and purging of the worst variety. So this is something that Dr. N.M. Choudhuri says, that to all the believers of homeopathy, to all the unbelievers of similia similibus curenter, we need to show this, We need to tell them that you have to try Croton Tig, and everybody knows that in crude form Croton Tig has this kind of action of producing diarrhea. So you try it in diarrhea. If in a patient who has diarrhea you find symptoms related to Croton, which he will further mention, we're going to talk about it, then you can anybody can just give Croton Tig, and then they can see the results for themselves, and they'll know that similia similibus curator is not a myth or not a fancy word just, but it's something that really works. So that's what he wants to say. He says that to condemn a science as being false without proper inquiry into and verification of its principle is unscientific. That people are just talking about homeopathy and not actually trying to experiment and see the results, which is unscientific. So you should go through this, and you should then finally it will be, you will get the evidence for it and you will know. So that is what he says over here. Further, he talks about the diarrhea of Croton Tig, which forms the most important part of this remedy. So let's go ahead and talk about that. So in Croton Tig diarrhea, Dr. N.M. Choudhuri says that there are three very, very important points that we find. So three very, very important points. The first 3 points. So stool is yellow and watery. The stool is expelled suddenly, and the stool coming out is as if shot out all at once. So it just gushes out. So that is very characteristic. First, it is yellow watery. In second, it is expelled suddenly, the stool coming out as if shot out all at once. And the third point, very important point, is diarrhea is aggravated by the least food or drink taken or on movement. So as soon as he eats, and whatever least amount of food he eats or drinks, he is going to get diarrhea just after that, and even on movement. So these are three very, very important points about the diarrhea of Croton Tig. And Dr. N. Choudhuri says that anybody, just randomly any person, not even a homeopath, now can administer Croton Tig if any patient surrounding him has these symptoms. And in any he says that in any potency you can try it, and you can yourself see whether your strongest bias against or disbelief in homeopathy is conquered, because it is going to be conquered, because these symptoms are very characteristic of Croton Tig, and if you find them, if you give this remedy, similar curator will act on it, will show its results. So that's about it. And then he now mentions more characteristic points related to diarrhea of Croton Tig. So these three are very, very important, but there are many more, few more also. So the fourth point is lot of flatus is associated with this diarrhea. So this is about the diarrhea. So there's a lot of flatus which is associated with this diarrhea, a lot of gas, and these stools are preceded by colic. So before the stools, the patient will have pain in abdomen and borborygmus. So meaning a lot of gurgling in intestines will be there, as though nothing but water was in them. So as if there was a lot of water in intestines, and there's a lot of loud noises that are coming out of the abdomen, and this pain in abdomen which is before stools. Now there is also a sensation of pressure. This sensation of pressure is on the umbilicus, and it is there is also a painful sensation. So it is not just a sensation, but there is also pain along with it. So this painful sensation of pressure in the anus, as if a plug were forcing outwards. So these are 5 very, very important points of diarrhea which are given by Dr. N.M. Choudhuri. Okay, so the stool is watery and yellow, and it is expelled suddenly, like a gushing out stools, and diarrhea is aggravated by the least food or drink or on also movement. There's a lot of gas, a lot of flatus associated with this diarrhea, and the stools are preceded by colic, and there's a lot of gurgling also. And there's sensation of pressure which is painful in anus, and also there is sensation in umbilicus. So that's about diarrhea. So he gives it in a very short and crisp manner, while also mentioning all the important points. So if we remember these 5 points about Croton Tig, we kind of know the keynotes of this remedy, and we will be able to prescribe this remedy with good results. So we have to try to learn these 5 points, and we're done with the diarrhea of Croton Tig. Now, since Dr. N.M. Choudhuri loves a lot of comparisons, and that is how we always learn a remedy in a better way, in great detail. So let's differentiate the remedies that he does, as he does in his book. So he talks about remedies in which diarrhea is aggravated after eating and drinking. So as we've seen in Croton Tig, the third important point was that after he eats least food or even drinks or even on movement, he gets the diarrhea. So now there are many remedies in which this diarrhea is aggravated after eating and drinking. Now let's see in which remedies is the same symptom present, but how do we understand when not to give those remedies and when to give those remedies, how to differentiate, because this symptom is present in a patient that comes to you. Now how to differentiate which remedy to give when it is present in so many remedies. So about Croton Tig we've already talked, and we already know that the stool is yellow in water, it is expelled suddenly like gushing, and diarrhea is aggravated by this eating and drinking and movement. There's a lot of gas associated with it, and before the stools there is colic, and there's a lot of gurgling in intestines along with sensation of pressure. And now we're going to learn about various different remedies. So a very important remedy in which this modality of aggravation after eating and drinking is present is podophyllum. But what is the difference? So even if the same thing is present, podophyllum has more of offensive stools. So a lot of offensiveness of stools is present. Another thing is that there is aggravation from 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. specifically. So after 12 p.m. there's not a lot much of symptoms, lot of symptoms or intensity of symptoms goes down. But 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. there's a lot of aggravation. There's exhaustion, there's gagging or empty retching. Prolapsus ani, so the anus comes out, the anus prolapses during and after stools. So this might not happen in every case that you have, but this is a symptom that is present in podophyllum. This might be there, okay? So prolapsus ani during and after stools. Violent cramps in feet, calves and thighs, plus yawning and stretching. So these are a few symptom complex totality of symptoms that you can have in your patient when you actually come to know that you have to prescribe podophyllum. So this is a totality of symptoms. The stool should be offensive, there should be exhaustion, 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. Aggravation is there, cramps are there, etc. Okay, moving on to the next remedy, we find that even in arsenic album there is this symptom of aggravation of diarrhea after eating and drinking. But in arsenic album we find that there is constantly increasing prostration, because exhaustion, prostration, fatigue is one of the characteristics of this remedy arsenic album. Therefore, this is also seen in diarrhea. Now there is also great restlessness, again another keynote of this remedy, plus thirst for sips of water and violent thirst actually, and nausea and vomiting. So all these generalities which are very important keynotes of arsenic album should accompany this modality of diarrhea also. Next, moving on to the next remedy, we find that there is nux vomica, in which there is aggravation, there's ailments from intoxicating drinks like from alcohol, okay, and high living, debauchery, from a lot of spicy food, from drastic drugging. So all these things are leading to the diarrhea, are causing the diarrhea or the dysentery. So these are the ailments from. Plus along with that we find ineffectual urging for stool. So in nux vomica, as you might already know, ineffectual urging is a very important central thing. So you find ineffectual urging everywhere in nux vomica. So the same thing will happen for diarrhea or stools as well. Along with it, backache. Again, backache is another important symptom in nux vomica. Oversensitiveness to external impressions will be there, and they will have this drowsiness after meals. There's intolerance of clothing about the abdomen, and there's unrefreshing sleep at night. There's heat in the head with redness of face, and all these things that we already know about nux vomica, the important characteristics of nux vomica, will accompany this modality in diarrhea. Then we also have another remedy called as trombedium. Trombedium also is a very important remedy for diarrhea. And in this remedy, what happens is that a very characteristic symptom is that pain in abdomen continues even after stool. So while discussing about Croton Tig, we studied that in Croton Tig, the stools are preceded by the colic. So there was colic, and after colic or pain in abdomen, the diarrhea came or the stools came. But in trombedium, what happens is this pain in abdomen continues even after they have passed their stool. And another important characteristic symptom is chill in the back with tenesmus. So whenever they have the urging to stool, whenever they have the tenesmus, then along with that there is chill in the back as well. Burning in anus after stool. So it's not just that they have pain in abdomen after stool, but they also have burning in anus after stool in trombedium. Moving on to the next remedy, there's China, in which there is aggravation at night, and there's distended abdomen that we see that these patients have, which is a very common symptom of China. And we see that there's rapid exhaustion again, which is a very important keynote of China, emaciation, drowsiness. Then pulsatilla. So in pulsatilla we find that no two stools are alike. Again we know about pulsatilla, that in pulsatilla it's one of the characteristic symptoms of pulsatilla, it's changeability. So because of that, no two stools will look alike, will be alike, okay. And there is irresistible desire for fresh air. She loves open air. There's bitter taste in mouth, or there might be loss of taste also. Plus there's thirstlessness, which is again a very important general symptom of pulsatilla, and white coated tongue. Moving on to the next remedy, which is ferrum met. So in ferrum met we see that again there is aggravation at night. We also saw in China there was aggravation at night. In ferrum met also there is aggravation at night. Undigested stools are there. Plus important symptom which is very characteristic for ferrum met is easy flushing of face. So the face easily gets flushed, it gets reddened, okay. On any slightest exertion or any slightest cause, it gets flushed, and there's painlessness, chronicity, and prolapsus recti again. So in podophyllum we are seeing that there's prolapsus ani during and after stools, and in ferrum met we are seeing prolapsus recti. So the rectum gets prolapsed, comes out prolapsed. Now in aloe we find that again there is diarrhea aggravated after eating and drinking, but there is involuntary stools along with it, and there is sensation of heaviness in abdomen. And finally, the last remedy that Dr. N. Choudhuri discusses is argentum nitricum. And in argentum nitricum, he says that there is ailments from excessive indulgence in sweets and sugars. So when your patient has diarrhea aggravated after eating and drinking, and you ask him, how did it start? What had you eaten? So, and he tells you that he had eaten a lot of sweets, a lot of sugary products. Then you have to think of argentum nitricum. Also, nervous excitement causes diarrhea in argentum nitricum. So all these were the differentiations, the remedies that Dr. N.M. Choudhuri talks about in relation to diarrhea getting aggravated after eating and drinking. So we're done with the diarrhea part of this remedy, and we're going to the next sphere of action, which is the skin. And on skin, it acts on skin causing eczema and urticaria, or there might be many conditions that you can call names for, but Dr. N.M. Choudhuri mentions eczema and urticaria, and eczema is especially of the scrotum. And the peculiarity in this situation is, although there is this desire to scratch, which is very great in this patient, but the patient cannot bear to scratch because there is extreme sensitiveness. So although they have this desire that they want to scratch, but they cannot scratch because the place is very extremely sensitive. And in urticaria also, this remedy is very well known for urticaria. There are eruptions which are large and copper colored on the skin of this patient. Another important indication which is not related to the skin or the GIT, but it's very important, and that's why Dr. N. Choudhuri mentions it, is that during pregnancy, parturition and lactation, what happens with this patient is that their nipple gets inflamed, hard, swollen, threatening a mammary abscess. So there might be a mammary abscess because the nipple gets inflamed, swollen and hard. And every time the child takes to the breast, so every time the child is feeding, there's excruciating pain which runs from the nipple through to the scapula of the same side. So it starts from the nipple, it goes back to the scapula of the same side. That's the characteristic kind of pain that happens in Croton Tig, and we might not at all think of Croton Tig in such a situation because we never think of it for any glandular issues, for any issues related to the breast, but that is why actually Dr. N.M. Choudhuri mentions this, because we never think of it. So we'll always think of it in diarrhea, and sometimes we might think of it in urticaria or eczema or skin affections, but we might never think about it for this condition. But now, since we have studied Dr. N.M. Choudhuri's Materia Medica, we're going to think about it. So that was all about this remedy. So in a short and crisp manner, Dr. N.M. Choudhuri beautifully mentions the very important points of this remedy that we all need to remember. So let's just revise, what did we learn. First, we learnt about the action of this remedy in the crude form, which was on the skin, which was on the GIT and on the uterus, right? And then we saw how Dr. N.M. Choudhuri very beautifully mentions about the diarrhea, the characteristic symptoms of the diarrhea, which were 5 important symptoms that we have revised multiple times. And then he talks about skin and one important point. And in between all of this, he revised he differentiated so many remedies on the basis of the symptom that diarrhea in this remedy Croton Tig gets aggravated by least food or drink, which is a symptom seen in many remedies. So he revised or differentiated so many remedies for that. right? So that we'll be able to differentiate when the patient comes to us with that symptom. So that's about it. Thank you so much, and I'll try to be more regular in the videos, but yeah, I'll try to be. Thank you so much.